All right, guys. So, one of the more interesting topics of conversation in the comic book movie world has been Captain America Brave New World and all of the problems that it has been struggling with, right? There were reports that they initially shot the movie and then they did test screenings, that those test screenings did really poorly, and then there were apparently like a bunch of reshoots, and then they test screened those that new cut of the movie, and then it apparently did poorly as well, so they did some more additional reshoots, and now we're stuck with whatever the movie is. And a part of all those reports has been that the budget has been inflated massively. So I believe this was who initially reported it. It was this website called World of Real. They basically had stated that Brave New World already had a budget of $275 million before reshoots began. Now, a contact deeply embedded in the current Brave New World reshoots is telling me that these reshoots are said to cost Disney/Marvel anywhere between $75 to $100 million. They tell me it's like they're shooting a brand new movie. So that essentially means that it could potentially have a budget of $375 million. Now, if that's true, that's ridiculous, right? Like, there's just that it really is just like the hubris of Marvel to think that a Sam Wilson as Captain America movie should have a $275 million budget. That's already ridiculous. To suggest that it should have and to suggest that like $375 million is warranted for a character like that, that's insane. I mean, but that's this narrative that we've been running with. However, that's apparently not exactly correct. So now the most recent report is coming from the Hollywood Reporter, and they are claiming, we'll read this paragraph here. It's back to the basics for Marvel when it comes to the movie, which sees an entirely new cast. Mackie Sam Wilson take up the mantle of Captain America, the hero previously played by Chris Evans. Tonally, the movie stays away from sci-fi elements and the multiverse and features an entirely new cast. It also cost around $180 million, less than many other Marvel movies. That's obviously way less than $375 million. That's obviously way less than $275 million. And I gotta be honest, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this, because this isn't, Joe's Movie Review.com, right? Like, this isn't some random shitter website. This isn't some random anonymous Twitter account, where it's like, I don't know, can you take them seriously? Who the hell knows? This is the Hollywood Reporter, right? They're one of the major trades. So it's like, I don't think that they would just straight up lie about what's going on. The only thing that I can maybe try and rationalize this budget with is maybe the reshoots just weren't as severe. Because, like, well, here's the thing. I don't believe that there weren't reshoots, right? And I don't believe that there weren't extensive reshoots. Like, there are straight up characters that were in the movie, like Seth Rollins, I think, is like a WWE wrestler that was in the movie. He's not in it anymore. Giancarlo Esposito, he was not in the movie before. Then after the reshoots, they added him as an entirely new character. So, like, it's one of those things where there's clearly smoke there and there's clearly fire. The only thing that I can maybe try and rationalize this is maybe the reshoots just weren't as extensive. We'll watch the movie. If Giancarlo Esposito is only in it for like 5 minutes, maybe, then okay, maybe that can point towards the reshoots not being as extensive. If it ends up being the case that Seth Rollins' character wasn't actually like a main villain in it, and so taking his scenes out and reshooting scenes to replace it with isn't as extensive, that could maybe make sense. And, like, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of ways that this could possibly make sense. Maybe when they decide, maybe when they did those test screenings, maybe the VFX was not done, right? Maybe they hadn't finished it. Maybe they hadn't done a ton of work on the VFX. And so maybe like they haven't had to pay as much on extra VFX work because that just has, maybe that wasn't done when they decided to do those reshoots. I don't know, right? Like, it's just weird. Because I don't want to completely just dismiss everything that we've heard, but I also don't want to like dismiss the Hollywood Reporter. Like I don't think that they would just lie about a budget like that. I don't know. Maybe they're saying the budget without the reshoots, or maybe they're saying the budget sans reshoots. Maybe they're not including. I don't know. I don't know. But either way, we'll see. We'll see if that ends up getting clarified at some point. I also wanted to talk about whether or not this, what it's tracking for, a $90 million plus box office, like, opening weekend debut. I've seen people, like, going, like, oh my gosh, this is a disaster for this movie. And in some senses, like, it kind of objectively could be, right? If the initial reports are correct, and this thing ends up having, like, a $375 million budget, then yeah, I mean, a $90 million debut is simply not good enough. Like, that's one of those things where they would have to make like almost a like probably like $700-800 million just to barely like break even. At that point, a $90 million debut is not good, and you're just not going to make that money back. But if their budget actually ends up being like $180 million, if that's real, if what the Hollywood Reporter is saying is accurate, then a $90 million is actually pretty decent. That's a perfectly fine start for a movie like that. But I also wanted to just talk about the realities of the Captain America franchise. And I think people think that Captain America is bigger than he is. So let's just look at the opening weekends in the history. So, Captain America: The First Avenger. This is a movie that opened to $65 million. That's not massive, right? Now, to be fair, the $90 million for Brave New World is like for the first 4 days. So if we because they're adding the President's Day weekend, like that Monday. So if we look at the first 4 days of Captain America: The First Avenger, $72 million. That's not like a massive opening weekend. Then if we look at The Winter Soldier, right? The Winter Soldier opened to $101 million in its first 4 days. That's great. I mean, that's sure. Like, I don't want to like dismiss that, but that's not like a massive, like, oh my God, like just to, well, and when I say it's not massive, I'm saying by MCU standards. Like, actually, let me just look this up real quick. Iron Man 3. So remember, Winter Soldier was post Avengers, right? Post the box office boom. Iron Man 3 is also the first Iron Man movie post Avengers. Let's see. Look at the original release. We look at domestic numbers. This is a movie that made $185 million in its first 4 days. So, I just want to point out that Captain America has never been a character where on his own he's putting up crazy numbers. Because it wasn't until Captain America: Civil War that in its first 4 days, that movie made like $192 million. But if we're being real, if we're being for real, no cap, that's because it was basically Avengers 2.5. The reality is that Captain America has, on his own, has never put up crazy, like, high-end MCU opening weekend box office numbers. It's just never been the case. Now, when you look at Captain America Brave New World, and you look at everything that it has going against it, right? It's not Steve Rogers as Captain America. It's them passing on the mantle. Naturally, there are going to be some people that are like, that's not really the Captain America that I know. Not necessarily because they're racists or anything like that. It's just the realities of it, right? We just saw with Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, right? That had a bit of a box office dip. I assume that in some part because it wasn't T'Challa, it wasn't Chadwick Boseman. That's just the nature of things. The other thing it has going against it is that Marvel kind of relegated Sam Wilson as Captain America to being a TV character, right? Falcon and the Winter Soldier kind of, in my opinion, neutered the value of Sam Wilson as Captain America. He's now a TV thing. And I think a lot of people are not going to have seen that TV show. Maybe not a lot of people, but I think some people may, along with not having seen the TV show, go, do I need to watch that in order to understand this? It's like, it's fine. I'll just skip this one. That's a possibility. That is a possibility. I think that you also have to just look at the current state of the MCU. The reality is that we are no longer in a world where audiences are just going to watch a Marvel movie because it's a Marvel movie. That's just the reality. Like, I think that obviously the Marvel facade broke with the Marvels, and that was the point where audiences were like, okay, we're not just gonna watch it because we're done with Marvel. At face value, right? Like, if you make something like Deadpool and Wolverine, where it has a bunch of fun cameos, right? People wanted to see Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman as those characters interacting with each other, like that kind of thing. Like, obviously Marvel's not completely dead, but they're not just gonna watch like these random other movies for the sake of watching them. And so I think Captain America Brave New World has to fight an uphill battle to that extent as well. So I think that when you take into account everything, when you take into account the fact that Captain America has never been a massive box office draw, when you take into account just the current state of the MCU and how Disney has already been handling Sam Wilson as Captain America, relegating him to TV, I don't think that Disney, unless they're delusional, I don't think that they can be unhappy with a 90 million box office start. Right? What does that tell you? That tells you that, generally speaking, the same audience that was there for Steve Rogers as Captain America, they're wanting to show up and give Sam Wilson a shot. That's what that tells you. And if you're Marvel, you have to be like somewhat happy about that. Now, I also think that if they did decide to spend an extra $100 million to reshoot the movie, what that tells me, and obviously this is speculation, is that they know that they're most likely not going to make their money back on the movie. I would hope that they're doing that with the understanding of, we really need to just start repairing the brand of the MCU, right? Like, what's most important to us, like, obviously we want to make money on it, but what's most important to us is that we just make a really good movie, and that the people that watch it start talking about how it's a good movie, which then builds up hype and anticipation for Thunderbolts. And if we nail Thunderbolts, that builds hype and anticipation for Fantastic Four. And if Fantastic Four is good, that starts building up hype and anticipation for Secret Wars. Like, hey, you guys should probably catch up on this because this is actually building up to something good. Like, I have to assume that's the mentality that Marvel is going with. I think that they are just completely delusional if they decided to pump $100 million more into this, being like, oh yeah, this thing's gonna make $1 billion and we'll be okay. Like, they would be delusional if they ever thought that. So those are my overarching thoughts on what's currently going on with Captain America Brave New World. I think there's some confusion. There's some dubiousness to a lot of this reporting. Again, I don't want to just say that anybody's lying or being dishonest. Like, I don't think that the Hollywood Reporter would just flat out lie about that, but we'll see. If like Deadline comes out and they contradict it in some way, then we'll see how we feel from then on there. But for now, whatever the budget is, I think Marvel has to be okay with a $90 million opening weekend, unless they're delusional. So let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.